from Facebook Live. And today we're going to be discussing the latest features, newest innovations, and coolest technology to hit the auto industry in this segment titled Drive Assist and Autopilot Are Not the Same. My name is Eliana Raggio, and I'll be your moderator today. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to the guy who has all the answers. Sam Abu El Samid is a principal analyst leading Guidehouse Insights e-mobility research service with a focus on transportation electrification, automated driving, and mobility services. Sam regularly contributes to a number of publications, including Forbes and BestRide.com. He also co-hosts the Wheel Bearings broadcast. Sam, thank you so much for being here with us today. We have a lot to cover. Are you ready to get to it all?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, Sam, I'm going to start off with this. All right. As a car expert, you, above all, you must be so excited about all these new innovations that we're seeing. I mean, we're going to go over a bunch of them, and some of them are for safety, and some of them are for convenience, and some are optional, and some are coming standard in these new vehicles that are coming out. And so I asked you to do this topic because you're keeping up with all of these and more, and thank goodness too, because there's so many new features coming to the market in these new vehicles. The average consumer can't keep up with all of this information. And most people don't understand, what these new things do. Do they want them? Are they worth the money? So thank you so much for being here to clear it all up for us. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to this because I know I'm going to be learning some things too as well. So, all right, everyone, buckle up because we're going to cover a lot of info in a very short period of time. All right. So the first section of features that we're going to be reviewing, they're under the category of advanced driver assist systems. So the first one that I think most people have seen or used already is called lane keeping assist. So what would you tell consumers about lane keeping assist? Why is it important? How much does it cost? Does it come standard on most vehicles? And do you like it? Sam?
Lane keeping assist is one of several of these, what we call ADAS features, the advanced driver assist systems, that utilizes a forward-facing camera that's mounted usually behind the windshield, just above the mirror on most new cars. Most cars that come from the factory today have this built in. It's not something you're paying any extra for, except for whatever increase we've had in the price of cars over the years, but it's there. And what it does, the camera is looking for the lane markings on the road and also looking at your steering input. And if it detects that you're starting to drift out of the lane in one direction or the other, there's various there's various levels of this. The most basic ones just give you an alert, usually some sort of beeping sound. In some cases it might be haptic feedback through the seat to let you know, hey, you're starting to drift out of the lane, you got to pay a little more attention. In some cases, in fact in many cases now, the assist systems, rather than just the alert systems, will actually do some steering input. So if you're starting to go out of the lane and you're holding onto the steering wheel, you might actually feel the steering pulling back towards the center of the lane. And so these systems are basically designed to help keep you from running off the road if it can.
But it even turns on when you don't use your blinker and you switch lanes. Isn't that right? I only know this because we have it on one of our cars and my husband hates it. I think it's great though. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, and this is, it goes partly combines with one of the other features that we'll talk about later, which is blind spot monitoring. But yeah, if you're changing lanes and you use your turn signal, as you always should when you're changing lanes, to let others around you know what you're about to do, then it won't give you any alert. But if you start to drift out of the lane, or if you start to pull over out of the lane, without using your turn signal, it will give you an alert because it doesn't know if you're intentionally trying to change lanes or if you are, just perhaps, maybe tired and not paying enough attention and starting to drift, or, maybe you've got driving somewhere where you've got a heavy crosswind that might be pushing your car in one direction or the other.
Fair enough. All right. So that was lane keeping assist. And let me just tell you, this is like one of like 15 things we're going to be talking about today. The next one, I love the name of it. I really hope it does help to reduce accidents. We could certainly all use that. It's called Forward Collision Alert. What is it? And do you feel it's useful? Is this a really great feature to have?
Yeah, it's certainly a step in the a step in the right direction towards avoiding crashes. And like lane keeping assist, most of the forward collision alert systems, at a minimum, use that camera, that same forward facing camera, and in some cases they also use a forward facing radar sensor or some other sensor that is trying to detect if you are closing too quickly on a vehicle in front of you, or if the car in front of you is slammed on the brakes, or there's something in the road, or a pedestrian has run out into the road. It will try to detect that, and if you don't hit the brakes in time, it will apply the brakes for you. And this goes with the next one as well, which is automatic emergency braking,
Ah,
which can try to slow the vehicle down and hopefully avoid the crash entirely if possible.
so do those two usually come together hand in hand?
Yeah, increasingly now, yeah. The early systems that started coming to market a few years ago were just collision warning systems. So it would, uh, you know, put up a message in the instrument cluster, or sometimes it was a heads up display where it was built into the top of the dashboard, and you would see a flashing yellow or red alert in the windshield in front of you to say, "Hey, you're at risk of a crash. You should hit the brakes." And now what they've done is they've enhanced that by adding in the automatic braking, so that if you don't hit the brakes in time, it will apply the brakes and try to stop you. Now, if you're going at 60 miles an hour, it may or may not be hit the brakes hard enough to actually stop, but at least if it scrubs off some speed, the lower your speed at the time of a collision, the less damage you're going to do, the less risk of injury or death. And so it's a good, it will at least help to mitigate the impact of a crash.
Okay. And so I know one of the things we are not going to talk about is airbags because airbags are now standard on everything.
Mhm.
But the automatic emergency braking and the forward collision alert, those are specifically designed for safety for consumers as they drive.
Yes.
So, are these the kinds of things that you feel are also maybe going to become standard, much like the airbags had?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. The forward cameras are already standard on most new vehicles today. They've been increasingly rolling them out to new vehicles over the last several years, and certainly most of the high volume vehicles you can buy today have those cameras built in. And within the next couple of years, they will be pretty much ubiquitous on every new car. Automakers several years ago made a commitment with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that they would also implement automatic emergency braking on almost all new cars by 2022. So probably by the end of next year, it will be very difficult to buy a car that doesn't have collision alert and automatic emergency braking on it.
I love that. That's great. Good for you, auto industry. I love it. All right. So the next one that we're going to talk about now, I don't know about anyone else out there. I love cruise control. I try and use it as often as possible, especially on those long, boring, straight highway drives. So cruise control is found on, I feel like almost every car. But Sam, what is adaptive cruise control, and why do we want it? And how much does that cost? Is that an extra?
Yeah, so adaptive cruise control is the next generation of cruise control. We've had cruise control for decades on cars, and traditional cruise control. What it's designed to do is you're on the highway, you turn on the cruise control, you set the speed at 65, 70 miles an hour, whatever your local speed limit is, and the car just maintains that speed. If you're going uphill, it'll give it a little more gas, so you don't slow down as you're climbing a hill. As you're going downhill, it backs off a little bit, but it just maintains whatever speed you set. And if something gets in front of you, it's not going to do anything. So when you're using cruise control, you have to continue to pay attention and be prepared to hit the brakes if necessary, or steer, do evasive maneuvers if necessary. Adaptive cruise control takes that a step further, where it adds sensors. And in most cases, it's using a radar sensor on the front of the car that is measuring the gap to the car in front of you and the speed of the car in front of you. And then what it'll do is, if the car in front of you slows down, so if you're going 70 miles an hour, the car in front of you slows down to 65 or 60 miles an hour, then the radar sensor will detect that, and it will automatically slow you down to 65 or 70 or 60 miles an hour, whatever. So it's designed to maintain that safe gap to the car in front of you. In some cases, rather than a radar, Subaru uses a stereo camera system that, by using two cameras, it can provide some depth perception, much like our eyes do, because you've got our eyes are separated, and so that gives us the ability to do depth perception. You can do the same thing with cameras. If you separate the cameras, and they're spread about 12 inches apart on a Subaru with what they call their eyesight system. Uh, and again, it's doing the same thing. It's using the cameras instead of a radar sensor to measure the gap to the car in front of you and automatically maintain that gap and adjust your speed. And then if the car in front of you speeds up, then you'll speed up at least up to whatever your set speed was. So if you were going 65 and you had it set at 70, and then they speed up to 75, it'll speed you up to 70 as well.
Okay. I feel like you've already mentioned sensors for like 4 of the 6 things that we've talked about. How many sensors are on the front of the car? How many
Uh,
sensors are there?
more and
And do
more
they
all the
use the
time.
same sensor, or like if one sensor goes down, do 3 of these things go down with it?
So we've got a variety of different sensors that are being used. I've mentioned the cameras. In most cases, you've got a single, we call a monovision camera, a single camera that's facing forward, and then also a radar sensor. And we've also got things like ultrasonic sensors. You know, those. If you look at your car, you might see those little circular, they're about an inch diameter, look like little buttons on your bumper. Those are ultrasonic sensors. They're sonar. Those are short range sensors. They're designed for parking assist to help you, when you're getting in or out of a parking space, to let you know when you're getting too close. That's another sensor that's used. We also have some cars that have more radar sensors. GM Super Cruise, Ford's Blue Cruise systems, they use 4 more. They use a total of 5 radar sensors, 2 front corner sensors and 2 rear corner sensors. And then there are some cars that also have additional cameras. In fact, most cars now also have additional cameras, because I think since 2017 or 2018, we've had mandatory rear backup cameras. So we've got a camera on the back. In some cases, we also have cameras on the sides. So, when you put your car in reverse and you get that bird's eye view that shows up on your center touchscreen, that's coming from the cameras. So you've got cameras in the front and the back and on the sides, usually under the mirrors. And then the computer stitches all those 4 images together to give you what looks like you've got a drone hovering over your car. That's how they do that. And then going forward, we've other new sensors that we've got coming that are coming to market in the next year or two. Are next generation radar sensors, what we call imaging radar, because current radar is kind of a low resolution sensor that's designed to just measure the gap and the speed of the vehicle in front of you. Imaging radar gives you a much higher resolution image, so it can distinguish more of the stuff that's around you. And then there's LiDAR, which you may have heard of for autonomous vehicles, but that's also coming to driver assist systems in the next couple of years. There's already some cars on the road that have LiDAR sensors on them, and there's going to be a lot more in the next few years.
Audience, didn't I tell you when I tell you he's an expert, Sam, you're amazing. It's amazing the amount of information you can fit into a half hour with me. Okay, thank you so much for that. I told you I'd learned some stuff today. Okay, next one we're going to discuss, and I'm pretty sure, again, this is one of those things that I feel like a lot of vehicles, I don't know if it's standard, we're going to ask Sam, already have this, and it's blind spot monitoring. Does it come standard on cars, Sam? And it's something consumers would want, yeah?
Oh yeah, blind spot monitoring has been available on cars for close to 20 years now. Volvo was the first one to introduce it in the early 2000s, and it is standard on a lot of cars today. Toyota has made it standard on most of their cars. It's a standard on a lot of cars from Ford, GM, Stellantis, a lot of vehicles. And what the blind spot monitors do is they use, I mentioned the corner radars earlier. The original corner radar sensors were the blind spot monitors. They're usually mounted in the rear corners of the car. Sometimes they're integrated into the tail lamp. Sometimes they're behind the bumper cover. And what they're doing is looking in your blind spot area on either side of you and behind you. And it's designed to detect if there's a vehicle in that area, so that when you're changing lanes, sometimes as the name implies,
I
you have
know.
blind spots. No matter how well you set your mirrors, this is why when you took your driver training, the instructor said, before you change lanes, before you turn, always look over your shoulders, because there's blind spots there you can't see in your mirrors, and it's designed to, you want to check those areas before you make a move and hit somebody. The blind spot monitoring systems use radar sensors to do that for you, and they they will typically have a little warning alert that is actually embedded in your outside mirrors, or at the bottom of your A pillars, like right at the corner of the front windows. You'll see a little light, and if there's somebody in your blind spot, it will light up that light, and sometimes also give you some sort of haptic feedback, either shake the steering wheel a little bit, or again shake the seat, to give you that alert that there's something you should be aware of before you move over. And so these are using the same type of radar sensors that I talked about earlier for adaptive cruise control, and for other things. Another great feature that's been added with those sensors, that, in addition to blind spot monitoring when you're driving down the road, is you can also use those same sensors for rear cross traffic alert. So when you're in a parking lot at the store, at the
Oh,
grocery
okay.
store, and you're backing out, now that everybody's driving SUVs, so everybody can be up higher so they can have a better view. Nobody's actually up higher because everybody's up high. And when you're backing out, you often can't see if somebody's coming down the lane, down the aisle in the parking lot. You can use those same sensors to, as you start to move back, it'll look down the aisle and let you know if there's anybody approaching from either direction and give you an alert. And in some cases, it will even automatically hit the brakes for you. So the rear, just as I talked about, automatic emergency braking on the front for collisions, some vehicles also have it on the rear. So if there's somebody approaching, it'll slam on the brakes and prevent you from backing out of that parking space and running into somebody, or having them run into you.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I can see that. Okay, so blind spot monitoring, A plus plus. All
Absolutely.
right. Okay, this next one, I feel like it's like out of a sci-fi movie. And even though my husband and I we own 3 cars, I actually don't own a car right now that has a heads-up display. But it looks so cool. But now they've taken it even a step further, and now they've added augmented reality. So first, Sam, what is a heads-up display? And now that it has augmented reality in some vehicles, let's talk about how that makes it different and even more valuable to consumers out there.
Sure. So heads-up displays, like a lot of these other things, have actually been around for a long time. Since at least the 1980s, early 1990s in some cases, and they've actually been used in aircraft for many decades. Pilots, they're often used in planes for pilots to give them information that appears to be floating in front of them, so they don't have to look down at their instruments. It's the same thing in your car. So what it does is, in the top of the dashboard, there will be a system that is projecting up onto the windshield, and it projects information like your speed, turn signals, navigation prompts, and so that it looks like it's floating in the air up above the end of your hood, so about 3 or 4 feet in front of you. That's the traditional heads-up display. What we're getting into now is what we call augmented reality displays. So those old the classic HUDs only display the information in one plane, so it all looks like it's at the same distance from you. The augmented reality HUD can actually display information in what appears to your eyes to be at multiple distances. So we've all had that experience when we're using the navigation system in the car, and it says, turn left now, or turn right, at the next intersection, and you're not. It's not clear where you're actually supposed to be turning, especially if you're in an unfamiliar area and you miss your
Yes.
turn. So the augmented reality display will actually project arrows out, so it looks like it's actually floating over the intersection where you're supposed to make your turn. And as you get closer to it, it gets bigger and it looks like it's getting closer. So it looks like it's floating over that street. So you have a better visual appearance, visual view of where you're supposed to make your turn. And that make it a lot easier to navigate around unfamiliar places. And then one
Oh,
one one other thing that we're going to start seeing them do with these systems as well is using the cameras to detect pedestrians. Then using the augmented reality HUD to actually highlight the pedestrian. So you can see a pedestrian that you might not have noticed with your eyes, but the camera picks them up, and will highlight it for you. So you know, oh, okay, I have to be more careful here because somebody's about to step out into the street.
Oh my gosh, it sounds so cool. Are you gonna get that on your next car? I know you will.
Well, I don't buy new cars very often. It's probably a few years before we buy another one. But very possibly, yeah.
Very possibly. I like that one. Okay. So, yeah, really like stuff we that might have been in, like I said, a sci-fi movie that
Hmm.
now is becoming reality. I'm reminded of those sneakers that were in Back to the Future when
Yeah,
he puts them on and they were like self-tying,
self-lacing.
and now they finally got them. I mean, it's about time, right? We're in 2022 almost, ready? So car manufacturers are not slowing down when it comes to really cool technology. They're really taking us into the future. Again, with this next upgrade, I feel like it's something I've been wanting for a really, really long time. So I think it's called, and Sam, please correct me if I'm wrong, four-wheel steering. So like when you're parallel parking and you can make it like crab walk into the parking spot, something like that. I saw a video on it, Sam. It looks really, really cool. Is it worthwhile to have something with four-wheel steering?
Yeah. So again, this is another one that we've actually had some applications of this going back to the 1980s, but now it's coming back again. In the past, these have been fairly expensive systems. They've added a lot of weight. They're complex, but we're starting to see them come back to market again. And with four-wheel steering, traditionally only your front wheels are doing the steering. Now with four-wheel steering, you can also steer the rear wheels, and that gives you some advantages when you turn all four wheels in the same direction. When you're changing lanes at higher speeds on the highway, for example, it can make the car more stable. And you kind of slide over and you get this crab walk mode, which is actually something they're launching on the new GMC Hummer EV, is the crab walk mode that almost lets the truck go sideways. And that can be pretty interesting. But the other thing you can do is if you turn the wheels in opposite directions, for larger vehicles, this can be really useful for maneuvering to reduce the turning radius. So if you've ever driven a big truck or a big SUV in a tight parking lot, trying to get it into a parking space, sometimes you got to have to go back and forth several times to get it lined up with the parking space, because with a long wheelbase, it's hard. You inherently have a large turning circle. With four-wheel steering, when you steer the wheels in opposite directions, you can steer a lot tighter, and it's easier to get in and out of these spaces. And so we're starting to see more vehicles coming to market with four-wheel steering, for stability at higher speeds and better maneuverability at low speeds.
Wow. I have to say, Sam, you surprised me. I didn't realize that four-wheel steering would have that many applications. Do you feel that this might be something that will carry through to a lot of different brands from a lot of different manufacturers, or there are only a few that are going to be utilizing this? Maybe ones with the bigger cars and the bigger SUVs and longer wheelbases.
I think mostly on larger vehicles is where it makes the most sense. It's not as big a benefit on smaller vehicles, but certainly on larger vehicles, it can be a real benefit. So I think we will see a lot of it on trucks and SUVs and larger cars.
Wow. All right. All right. We still have so much to get to. So I love this next innovation as well. Night vision. Talk to us about night vision. And I mean, because I just was driving down a road just this past weekend, had zero lights. And would night vision have helped me on a road like that when there was fog and that kind of thing, and visibility wasn't that great?
Yeah, no, it absolutely can. So night vision systems use an infrared camera, a camera that detects radiation. It's electromagnetic radiation in the infrared spectrum, which is outside of the range of our human vision. So our human vision, we can see light in the range of about 400 to 700 nanometer wavelength. Infrared systems can go from 700 up to about 14,000 nanometers, which means that basically they can see in the dark, in complete darkness. They can see in conditions where our eyes cannot detect anything, which, as you mentioned, A lot of times you may be driving in a rural area where there's no street lights, or just as you get older, your eyesight degrades, and especially your humans' night vision gets worse as we get older, and so it can be very helpful to have a night vision system that can highlight, especially pedestrians and animals. Because there are this very specific temperature range, and it's what it's doing is detecting differences in temperature across the field of view. So if there's a deer running out of the woods or a dog,
Yes.
or
This is a huge
yeah,
problem. Deers kill more people
absolutely.
than any animal out there.
Yeah. And I mean, I've struck a deer one time in my life, and
Me too.
had a few near misses. Especially this time of year, here in Michigan, where it's hunting season, and the deer are more on the move. They're more likely to be near the roads. It's important to be able to see them. So if you've got a night vision system, it can help you to see those. And as I talked about with the augmented reality HUD, it can also highlight those hazards. So it's not just there, but it's actually put a box around it and say, hey, watch out for this, which is definitely a good safety benefit.
Yeah, and I'm deer number one. Avoiding deer, yes, please.
Yeah.
But I am surprised at the amount of people who walk down streets at night and wear all dark clothing and think that they are completely visible to drivers at 40 plus miles per hour. And it's scary out there. So wow, night vision system, so cool. All right. So one of the things, Sam, that I mean, it's we said it in the at the top of the show. The title says it all, right? I think a lot of consumers, including me, we're getting a bit confused by different terminology that's used by different manufacturers, and also, they sound kind of very similar. The titles of these new features, but they're actually not similar at all, and it would be incorrect to use them interchangeably. So okay, let's talk about that. So drive assist, automated driving, and autopilot. Like people are using these interchangeably. Can you go over each one of them, please, for us and explain sort of quickly the differences and how they're not the same?
Right. So driver assist systems are designed to do exactly what the name implies, to help the driver. The human sitting behind the steering wheel is still in control of the vehicle. You are responsible for everything that happens with that vehicle. And the system is designed to provide you with some increased situational awareness, maybe to help out with some of the tasks of driving, but you're still in control. You're responsible. Automated driving is, or autonomous driving, self-driving, that they all kind of fall together. Those systems are designed to take over the driving task from the human. So with an automated driving system, the human is out of the loop, and the sensors on the car and the software are designed to perceive the world around the car, try to make sense of it, understand what it is around there, plot a path through that environment, and drive the car with no human interaction. One of the problems we have is some manufacturers, most notably one in particular, it has have used terms and sold features that they call full self-driving, which is actually not self-driving. It's still a driver assist feature. If the system tells you that you have to keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road, or even just your eyes on the road, then you are responsible, and it's a driver assist system. It's not there. And today there are no vehicles that you can buy anywhere in the world that are autonomous.
Okay.
No matter what the manufacturer calls it, there are no autonomous vehicles that you can buy. And so you're in control. You're responsible as the driver.
Okay, but there are manufacturers out there that are looking to try and make them. They're in testing
Yeah.
phases. They're they believe that autonomous driving vehicles is something that will be coming to us at some point, like robo taxis or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies developing automated driving systems. Companies like Waymo and Cruise and Argo and Baidu in China, and many others. And we actually have some automated vehicles that are on the road today doing pilot programs for deliveries and robo taxis. If you live in the Phoenix area, you can go and download the Waymo One app, and you can request a ride from one of their automated vehicles. If you're in Las Vegas, you can get Motional's vehicles and take a ride, in a self-driving vehicle. Soon in San Francisco with Cruise, but before the end of the year in Austin and Miami with Argo. So there are pilot programs out there, but none of these are vehicles that you can buy, and these are vehicles that you will not be able to buy anytime in the foreseeable future. But manufacturers are also working on automated systems, at least for things like automated highway driving, and some other scenarios that you can take your eyes off the road and turn your brain off for a while. But those are still quite a few years away. You cannot buy those vehicles today.
Okay, and we do want to stress, audience, that if you do get a car that has some kind of driver assist where it takes over and you are hands free for just a little bit, you're still responsible for everything that happens with that car. You're required to still take over the wheel at any given time. Isn't that right, Sam?
Absolutely. So you get systems like General Motors Super Cruise, Ford's Blue Cruise, Nissan's upcoming ProPilot version 2. These are all systems that allow you to take your hands off the wheel during highway driving, but they're still driver assist because they require you to keep watching the road. And in fact, they use an infrared driver monitor camera to watch your eye gaze and your head pose to make sure you're still alert and watching the road and ready to take over if needed. And if the system determines that you're not paying attention, if you're looking down at your phone and texting, or doing something or taking a nap, you'll be able to detect that, and it will alert you to say, hey, you need to pay attention and be ready to take over. And if you don't, then what these systems will do is they'll automatically start slowing the car down and bring it to a stop. And if you still are non-responsive, like if you've had a medical emergency, if you had a heart attack or a stroke, or a diabetic incident, and you don't respond to those alerts, they can actually call 911 for you and provide your location to emergency services if you need medical help.
And Sam, you brought me right into the next section about what we're going to talk about. So we spent all this time talking about driver assist and driver assistance systems, but now we're going to talk about driver monitoring, which is exactly what you were discussing. So let's go into that a little bit. So real fast, we talked about what driver assist is. It really just assists you in driving. It says what the name does. But driver monitoring, talk to us a little bit about how it's different and why a consumer might want to look into or have at their disposal on their car a driver monitoring system.
Yeah. So driver assist systems, all those sensors we talked about earlier, the cameras, the radar, lidar, ultrasonic, all of those sensors are looking outwards, looking at the world around the car to try to detect what's going on and provide the driver with some alerts and some assistance. The driver monitoring system actually has a sensor that's inside the car, and it's typically a little infrared camera that sits on the steering column that looks at your face. They're not broadcast, you're not streaming your face or anything. And the reason why it's an infrared camera is so it can see in the dark. It can also see through your sunglasses if you're wearing sunglasses during the daylight. So what it's designed to do is look for where your eyes are looking and the position of your head. So if you decide to take a nap, or if you're drowsy, a lot of people drive when they're drowsy, and that's not a good thing to do. It's not safe. These systems can detect if you're not alert enough and provide you, it'll alert you to say, hey, you need to pay attention and take over. And if you don't, then it'll bring the car to a stop. And I think that's actually a really valuable thing. And this is actually something in the infrastructure bill that was just passed by Congress and signed by the president. One of the elements in that infrastructure bill is it directs the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to, by 2026, they have to bring in a regulation that protects against drunk driving and
Oh,
distracted driving. And these driver monitor cameras that are already in a lot of cars and will be in millions of cars by 2026 are the most likely way to do that. Because if you're impaired, or if you're ill, or if you're just tired, it can detect, by the position of your head and where your eyes are looking, or if your eyes are closed, that, hey, this person is not able to drive safely. We need to stop the car. And that's the sort of thing that by 2026 will probably be standard across the board on all new vehicles.
And I mean, when we say, that it will monitor you, it would even monitor somebody if I read correctly, if somebody's having a medical emergency. Isn't that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, exactly. So if you lose consciousness for any reason, like as I said, if you had a heart attack or a stroke, or if you're a diabetic and you have low blood sugar or high blood sugar, and you're having a medical emergency, and you're not able, if your head slumps over or slumps down, it can see that, and it'll try to alert you. And if you don't respond within a few seconds, then it will take control and stop the car, and it can then call emergency services for you.
That's incredible. What an amazing advancement. Okay, I did write down something from the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration, which you just brought up, specific to distracted driving, and they define distracted driving as any activity that could divert attention from the primary task of driving. And it could be changing the radio station. It
Hmm.
could be anything. It could be talking on your phone. It could be sneezing, for Pete's sake. But distracted driving consistently causes about 3,000 deaths in the US each year. And that's about 8% of all accidents. Accidents that the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration feels are avoidable. So, driver monitoring systems they're hoping will, once they're in more widely used, are going to hopefully take that number down. And wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. We can have all the laws in the world that say you're not supposed to do anything with your phone while you're driving. But the reality is, if there's no police around to, that see you doing that and then pull you over, you know, that there's nothing to stop you. And distracted driving is a real issue. And if we've got a system, a fairly simple, low cost solution like a driver monitor system that can see if you're looking away from the road, for whatever reason, whether it's playing with the radio, or playing with your phone, or just if you're dealing with your kids in the back seat, we've all been there. Then to be able to detect that and intervene, I think is really important, and that's something that will have potentially a really huge impact on traffic fatalities and
Gosh,
crashes.
I really hope so. I mean, all of these advancements seem like they're really built to try and keep drivers safe, which is amazing. And actually, let's talk about that because when you were describing driver monitoring systems, you said, oh, it'll slow you down, pull you off to the side of the road, and even call for help. Well, you can't do that without connectivity, right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about connectivity, and audience, you probably have seen or heard something like OnStar, for instance. So let's talk about how these cars are now smart enough to be connected and then call for emergency services, even after it detects from an accident or for a medical emergency.
Yeah, so we've had, the first connectivity services came to market in 1996. It was GM's OnStar. That's their brand for their system. Every manufacturer's got some sort of connectivity system available in their car. It's using a cellular radio, same thing that's in your phone, and it can get data from the cloud and send data to the cloud. So it can do. They're doing things like being able to do map updates for your navigation system, but also calling for assistance. And this is one of the features that GM introduced back when they first launched OnStar 25 years ago, was automatic 911 assistance. So if you get into a crash and airbags go off, it will automatically call for emergency assistance and provide your location. And so even if you are unconscious, it can still send out somebody to help. Now we're getting to the point where these connectivity systems are getting close to being standard on almost all new cars. Most manufacturers now have them standard on everything they build. GM has had for more than a decade. Ford is now standard on everything. Honda, Toyota, Nissan, they're putting it in all their new cars. And so this, as a component, along with all of these other systems that detect what's going on, can be a really important part of making driving safer for everybody, not just for the people in the vehicle, but also for the people outside of the vehicle.
Agreed. This is amazing. Okay, so some of the I was paying attention to you, Sam. I know uh, some of the ones that you had mentioned earlier. Let's discuss them. You said Ford Blue Cruise. You
Mhm.
said GM Super Cruise. Like, can we talk a little bit about those and tell me what would a consumer get if they got a vehicle that had one of those two systems?
Yeah, so these systems and others, branded differently from other manufacturers, are what we call level two partially automated systems. They're still driver assist, and essentially what they do is they combine all these other features that we've talked about, the cameras, the radar, and whatever other sensors you have, to enable hands-free driving under certain conditions. And right now, it's just in highway driving. So GM launched Super Cruise in 2017. Ford recently launched their Blue Cruise. Nissan's got their Pro Pilot version 2 coming. And what they're designed to do is they use high definition maps of highways, and they're designed to work on highways. So much like, it's kind of the next generation of adaptive cruise control, using the radar sensors and the cameras to detect where you are on the road, where you are relative to other vehicles, and to allow you to take your hands off the wheel in those highway driving conditions. And you still have to watch the road and be ready to take over at any time. But when you're on a road that's been mapped, it will allow you to put your hands in your lap and then just continue driving down the road. Now, there are some risks with these systems because, as I said, they are not eyes off, they're not brain off. You have to watch the road. You're still responsible for whatever happens. Autopilot is another one that is similar, but it's not officially a hands-free system. Because Tesla has opted not to include a driver monitor system as part of it. This is where the driver monitor systems are being used today, is for these hands-free systems. And you'll see more and more of this, and they'll be expanded to more roads that you can use them on over the next few years. GM recently announced their Ultra Cruise, which is their next generation of this,
Oh
which will allow
wow.
you to use it on city streets. And they're adding in a LiDAR sensor as part of that, in addition to the cameras
A
and the radars.
what? A what?
LiDAR. So this is a laser sensor. So it's
Ooh.
using a scanning laser to get another view of the road, of the world around you, in addition to the cameras and the radar.
So, we might be getting too technical. Does the laser sit on top of the camera and the radar, and then it concatenates all the information so that you have one hopefully full picture? We'll talk
Yeah,
about it another.
basically, yeah, because each one of these sensors has their limitations and their strengths. So cameras are great for trying to do classification, to understand what's in the view. So to be able to say, oh, okay, there's a vehicle over here, there's a pedestrian over there, there's a dog over there, and to classify the world around you. But they have challenges with lighting conditions. If you're driving right into the sun in the morning or in the evening, they have a hard time seeing the world. Radar can see through things like fog and rain. It's really great for that. And it can measure distance and speed to other objects. LiDAR kind of overlaps those two, uses a laser to scan the world in front of you or around you, to create a point cloud, and does a great job of measuring distance and speed. So the combination of all of these gives you a more robust view. When you combine them all, they call it sensor fusion. You combine them all, you fuse them together, you can get a really clear view of what's around the vehicle and make better decisions.
Okay. uh, this is fantastic explanation of everything that we just talked about. And I have a great question that came in I want to throw at you. This one came in from Brandon, and he says, what about debris in the road? Will these systems move around the debris, or will they get in my way when I try to swerve around something? Um, do any of these systems, driver assist or monitoring, would any of these systems help when there's debris in the road, or that is still a driver, make sure you turn real fast?
This is why all these systems still require the driver to pay attention. They some in some cases they can detect debris, like if there's a tire sitting on the road or a trash bag or something like that. They can, in some cases, they'll detect it. They generally won't steer for you. They won't do an evasive maneuver, and they also won't get in your way if you do try to swerve. The next generation systems are moving in the direction of doing that automatic evasive steering for you. There
Oh,
are some systems like Ford has, evasive steering assist, so that if it detects that you are putting in a sudden steering input to try and evade something, it will actually help and augment what you're doing, and increase the amount of steering effort, so that to help you get around whatever you're trying to avoid. But for the most part, they won't do it on their own yet. But next generation systems will. And when we have the higher resolution radars and the LiDAR sensors, they'll be better able to detect. I know, a lot of LiDAR sensors can detect a tire sitting on the road, or a brick, a cinder block sitting on the road that may have fallen off a truck, at several hundred feet away, even in total darkness. And that can be extremely valuable to, at the very least, alerting the driver that, hey, there's a hazard there that you need to watch out for.
that's amazing. Amazing technology that we have coming into the auto industry now. And I'm curious, Sam, since you're the car expert, you obviously have the pulse of what's happening. Uh, what do you, I mean, are we trending in the right direction? And what are you most excited about? I mean, what do you see coming down the pike with all this added technology? Is it just going to get better?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of this is really going to help to improve safety, and make drivers more aware. That, I think that's the key thing, is to improve drivers' awareness of what's around them. Because we don't have eyes in the back of our heads, but if we have sensors all around us that can tell us what's there, hopefully, drivers can make better decisions. And as we move forward, the systems will be able to step in and help us to augment what we're doing. So, some of these systems, are, branded with things like Teammate or Copilot, where they're watching over you, and can help to, augment what you're doing, to basically be like a guardian angel as you're driving down the road, and help you to avoid hazards and crashes.
That's a beautiful way to put it. All right. So, see, audience, all you have to do is rely on a little technology. Sam, you're
Don't rely
amazing.
on it too much, though.
That's true. That's true. I can't wait to see what topic you're going to bring to us next here at bestride.com. You're amazing, Sam. And I want you all to know, audience, you can check out Sam's amazing podcast at wheelbearings.media, where he addresses the most interesting automotive stories of the week. He reviews cars, even. I didn't know if you knew that. And of course, he answers listeners' questions. So, Sam, anything else you need to tell us about all this great technology?
Just that there's a lot of it out there, and it's a good idea. Before you go out and shop, there's do some research. There's also a really good website, from the National Safety Council, called My Car Does What. If you go to mycardoeswhat.com, they've got a lot of this information there that you can look up, and hopefully better understand. And if you still have some questions, feel free to go to my podcast site at wheelbearings.media and submit your questions there, and we will try to answer them on the show for you every week.
Or we'll just have you back here. Thank you so
That too.
much, Sam. You're amazing. All right, and I love that you said, "Hey, consumers, it really is upon you to do your research." And speaking of research, that's right, shameless plug. Bestride.com is the smartest, easiest way to find a car online and do your research. And that's what we're here for. We're going to help you narrow it down to the vehicle that's right for you. You can search by body style, you can connect with local dealers, read car reviews, read about industry news, other news. I mean, you can search new, used, certified, pre-owned, make, model. You can even look at cars that are only in your zip code. I mean, there's so many different ways you could do your research. And of course, we have great shows like this to share with you as well. So it's a great time to buy a car. Bestride.com can help. Search millions of cars, find your best ride. Sam, thank you so much for being here today with us. Audience, I got to tell you, next week, I have an equally fascinating show to tell you about on a bestride.com Facebook Live. It's going to be December 1st. And yes, it's another bestride.com Facebook Live. It's actually our last one of the year. So we really hope you can come. And it's the perfect time for this topic: 12 winterizing tips for safe driving during the holidays. Yes, It's the most wonderful time of the year. Sam is about to sing to me. I know it. And is
No.
your vehicle ready for the snowy ride to the family get together? Automotive winter prep can make the difference between a holiday mishap or a Yuletide gathering. And our automotive expert, Craig Fitzgerald, will also share his favorite cool car gadgets that'll make fantastic holiday gifts for the car enthusiast on your list. So tell all your car loving friends to put it on their calendar. It's going to be Wednesday, December 1 at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We'd love to see you there. And all you have to do is like the bestride.com Facebook page so you don't miss it. Remember, it's Wednesday, December 1st, 2 p.m. Eastern. There you go. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding our broadcast and our topics, I'd love to hear from you. Please connect with me. I'm Eliana at bestride.com. On behalf of Sam, Abuel, Samit, and the great folks at Guidehouse Insights, as well as the rest of the amazing crew at bestride.com, thank you all so very much for spending this time with us today. And I hope to see you all on another broadcast from your friends at bestride.com. Wishing you all a very safe and very happy Thanksgiving. Take care, everyone.
Bye.